Hey everybody, welcome back to another chess video. Today we're going to touch on some positional concepts and a couple other random tips that are going to help you out in your chess games. So let's get started. Now let's remember that if possible, it's always best to have your pieces protecting each other, ideally twice. Now look at this position in front of you. Even if the black knights do protect each other, this defense can easily be disrupted by the pawn moving to f4. And black is going to lose a piece no matter what. Okay, let's take a look. Now secondly, move your queen and king out of the x-rays of rooks and bishops, no matter how many pieces are in between. Now as a beginner, you might tend to always focus on your queen for checkmates or tactics and immediately disregard your other pieces. This is why you can miss a tactic like the one in this position. Okay, so from this position, it's white to play and checkmate in only 2 moves. Are you able to find those 2 moves? We see that the white bishop on b2 right here does a very good job of attacking the dark squares. So if we find a way to check the king on the light squares, that's going to be a checkmate. The brilliant move here, it ends up being queen to e6. Black is forced to take, and now we're able to deliver this beautiful bishop checkmate. Now let's look at another scenario. White to play, and again checkmate in only 2 moves. Now I feel like this one might be a bit easier because you already know it's going to be a queen sack. Now black again is forced to take, and white can deliver a rook checkmate. But the x-ray can also be used for defense. Now in this position, you might be reluctant to take the knight because of fear of the back rank mate. But you can do it without worry, because if black plays queen to d1 check, you won't take the queen with the rook. Instead, you're going to defend with queen to e1, and now you're 1 piece up. Another really important thing to remember, never ever just auto-recapture. Always think of an alternative move. Now I know your first instinct is to recapture right away, but it's good practice to always look for intermediate or intermezzo moves. Let's see an example. It's black to play here, and we see that he can create this really powerful battery on the c-file. The problem? White can take our bishop, and if we capture right away, white has this really nice fork here which would win him the game. Now instead, black can play an intermezzo move and check the white king, forcing him to move. Now, black can capture the rook without worrying about that fork. Let's see one more example. Black took our rook, thinking this would be a simple exchange, but surprise, surprise. Instead of recapturing right away, white plays this queen to b7 check first, and only after the king moves, he's able to take the rook. Now, quick question. Why did white play that queen move first? Well, it's because if black tries to save his rook, queen to e7 ends up being checkmate. So black has to give up his only rook to avoid being mated. Another really important tip, if you ever find yourself cramped in a position, try trading pieces. Trades always favor the side with less space. So if you feel cramped, try trading a couple minor pieces off. In this new example right here, black is a little bit squished, while white has a massive space advantage. Black's plan is to trade down almost all of his pieces, starting with his bishop by moving it to a6. Now white would move rook to b1. We continue with the initial plan by trading and playing queen to c2 next move to exchange the rooks as well. Now, even if this position is equal, black has a much easier game than before. Now you guys already know this, but pawns can't move backwards, so you really need to carefully consider the squares being weakened with every single pawn push. Be very careful of this tip, especially in the endgame, because pawns control key squares that could win or lose your game. Now, always think twice before moving them because they just can't go back. For example, white is winning here, but they make this massive blunder by playing pawn to g3, just trying to kick out the knight. Now, by doing that, they create a massive weakness here on the light squares, which allows black's knight to checkmate on e2 or h3. Let's see one more example. White plays knight to g5 without a particular purpose in mind. Now he was expecting black to bring their knight back as well, but he's in for a surprise. They blunder the move, pawn to f6, trying to kick the knight out. This move not only leaves the e-pawn completely undefended, but it allows white's knight to fork both black rooks. Black's immense advantage was lost, all due to one single pawn push. When your opponent makes a move, you should ask yourself what squares or pieces did they just neglect, and what changed in the position. because every time your opponent makes a move, they're going to give up defending certain squares. In this example, black captures our bishop on d8. White moves his knight with a check on g5 with the idea of opening the queen's path. Now, the best move in this position for black would have been king to g6, because if he retreats to g8, this is going to allow white to play queen to h5, and now black is going to have a really hard time defending this. Instead, if he plays king to g6, white's queen is not going to be able to infiltrate. Have you ever wondered how really good chess players just immediately know if there's tactics on the board or not? It comes obviously from their experience, because chess is widely a pattern recognition game, which is why it's really, really important to do puzzles, and with practice, you'll come to know just by looking at a certain position if there's tactics there or not. Another way to think is in terms of checks, captures, and threats. I've spoken about this before. Here, white made a blunder by playing bishop to b4. Now, how is black able to take advantage of this? Well, if you said queen to d4, then congratulations. By playing that move, black forks the king and the bishop. Now let's look at another example. It's black's turn to play. So, can you find the best move for black here? Once again, let's think in terms of checks, captures, and threats. Alright, so for starters, do we have any checks? No. Okay, so moving on to captures. We see that we can exchange knights, but after that, what do we got? Black doesn't really have any good continuation. So what are the captures do we have? Well, we see that the knight can capture the g2 pawn, but white is simply going to recapture. Or is he? Let's look closely at this one. If the white king recaptures it, this would expose him quite a bit, and black would have a forced checkmate in the next couple of moves. Now, can you find another brilliant sacrifice here? Okay, if you found bishop to h3, then congratulations. This is the correct move that would force the checkmate. If white doesn't take it and goes back, then queen to g6 and g2 is mate. If white decides to take it, we have this beautiful forcing sequence right here. When considering tactics that don't quite work, you need to reverse the order. Now, I don't know if you saw my previous video where I spoke about a very important skill in chess, and that is to be able to reverse engineer your moves. Look at this position I placed in front of you. What can we observe? Well, first of all, black has a checkmate threat on a2. So, we got to find a way to checkmate first or stop that threat. Now here, white has a forced checkmate in 3 moves. We see that the white pawn on f6 does a very good job of protecting the e7 and g7 squares. So, the enemy king is stuck on the 8th rank. Also, the pawn is going to provide good support for our queen to deliver that checkmate. We just need to find a way to bring the queen there before we get mated. Now, how are we going to be able to force this? Well, we'd start with rook to h8, check. Black is forced to take. And now, what's the winning move going to be for white? Well, I really hope you said queen to h6 and not h2, because we want to checkmate with the queen on g7, and the only way to do that is to play queen h6, forcing black to move to g8, and it's checkmate next move. Okay, so let's look at one more example. In this new position, white has a checkmate in 3 moves. Now, naturally, white would calculate sacrificing the rook first. Unfortunately, this move is not going to work here. Let me show you why. But the unintuitive queen sacrifice is going to force black to lose the game in just 3 moves. If black doesn't take the queen, then queen to c7 is mate. If black takes the queen, rook to c7. The only available square ends up being a8, then knight to b6 is checkmate. I hope you found this video really useful and really entertaining, and I really hope you apply these 7 tips in your next games. Take care, and we'll see you next time.